Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shrutismriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpadam Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Badarayanam Sutra Bhashakritau Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punaha Samasta Jana Kalyane Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidvaram. Om Bhadram Karnebhiः Shrunuyama Devaः Bhadram Pashyemakshabhiryajatraः Sthirairangai Stushtuvagnsastanubhiः Vyashema Devahitam Yadayuः Swasti na Indro Vridhashravah Swasti na Pusha Vishvavedaः Swasti nastarksho Arishtanemiः Swasti no Brihaspatirdadhatu Dadhatu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om, salutations to all. So the answer of Pipalada Rishi about Shodashakala Purusha is what we are seeing, and the commentary of that. In the answer, Pipalada Rishi said, Iha eva anta sharire soumya. Here in this very body, O dear one, that Supreme Purusha is Yasmin Netaha Shodashakalaha Prabhavanti, and it is from that Purusha these 16 kalas they appear, they manifest. So the discussion was that these 16 kalas are only a superimposition on the Purusha from the standpoint that we see the creation and we classify this creation into these 16 kalas. And if they are there, then from where have they appeared? They are appearing from the source, that is Purusha itself. So they are not really there in Purusha. Purusha is absolute. These are only superimposed. Now, in that context of the discussion of superimposition and the substratum, Shankaracharya ji came into this discussion about the deep sleep aspect. Why did we land up in the deep sleep aspect there? Because he gave different viewpoints of what people think about this Purusha and the Kalas. So what the materialist thinks, what the Buddhist thinks, what the logician thinks, all that he gave, and then he quoted the Upanishad verses to say that Purusha is changeless, Purusha is birthless, deathless, it is consciousness, and Kalas cannot exist without the Purusha, but Purusha can exist without the Kalas. Like in the deep sleep state, objects are not there, but the self remains. So from there we have gone into the discussion. And now we are at a point where the objection was raised that since there is no awareness of the objects to be known, knowledge itself is absent in that state, meaning objects are not there in deep sleep state. So that means consciousness also is not there. That is where we had stopped. So Shankaracharya ji says that is not correct, because even the Buddhist, the nihilist, also accepts the awareness of consciousness, awareness of nothingness. So awareness is there. So one cannot say that there is no awareness or there is no consciousness of a consciousness present by itself when all the objects are absent. Now the confusion in that statement, the next statement was tatrapi gneyatvam api ubhagamyate, tatrapi gneyatvam api, sorry, I'm making it wrong sandhi it is. Tatrapi gneyatvam abhyupagamyate jnanasya svenaiva iti. Now if someone says that okay, all objects are not present, then this line here, the doubt raised is, why not we say that consciousness itself is the object and consciousness only is aware of the object as itself? You see that question? That consciousness is aware of itself as an object. That's the question. Even there, it is held that consciousness is known to itself. That line means that consciousness knows all the other objects in the waking and dream state. In deep sleep state, there are no objects of waking and dream, but consciousness is object of itself. So consciousness knows itself. So now Siddhanti Shankaracharya says, na bhedasya siddhatvat, because it's very clear that the knower and the known are separate. And also that ultimate knower never becomes the known. If that knower becomes the known, then we go into, then there's no other, then who knows that? And then it will go into a different regress, infinite regress it will go. And also the knower will become perishable, then there's no ultimate knower. So here he says, no, bhedasya siddhatvat. Siddham hi abhava vigneyasya vishayasya jnanasya abhava jneya vyatirekat jneya jnanayoho anyatvam. Nahi tat siddham mritam iva mritam ivod jivaitum punaranyatha kartum shakyate vainashik kashatayrapi. So he says that this distinction is also already very clear, that the knower is different, the known is different. Because earlier it was said that the known, the objects all disappear, consciousness remains. From there only this whole discussion has come. And then in between the other arguments also, they proved that knower and known are separate. So he says they are already, we have discussed, they are separate, and knowledge that pertains to an object of the form of non-existence is different from that non-existent object. So the object which is existing and the knowledge of that object, they are different. This you apply to non-existent also. That absence of this, so this actually this thermos not existing and the knowledge of that there is no thermos, that also is clearly different or not, because thermos is separate. If it is right now here, then it is taken away, it is not here. So there is an absence actually of the object. Then the knowledge of that absence is rising in my mind, knowledge of the presence is rising in my mind, enlivened by consciousness. So here that's what he means by saying that object of the form of non-existence is different from that non-existent object. So in that way, the difference between the knowable and the knowledge stands as an established fact. So even for non-existence, it is very clear. Then obviously for objects which are existing also, it is very clear that the knower and the known are very different. the consciousness enlivens both the presence of the object, the absence of the object, the knowledge of the object and of the object's existence, and the knowledge of the object's non-existence. Both are illumined by consciousness, and that is different from these. So it will never become the known. It is the same thing will not be at the same time knower and the known. In Vedanta, we have these laws of seer and the seen, knower and the known, Drigdrishya Vivek it is called. So in Drigdrishya Vivek, one rule is the knower and known are different. And the knower and the known cannot be the same. I mean, the same entity cannot be knower and known at the same time. So for example, this thermos is the known, I is the knower. Now, the mind sees through the eyes. So in that context, the mind is the knower, the I is the known. Mind knows the states of the eye. You know, partial vision, full vision, blindness. These are states of the eye. The mind knows that. So there the mind becomes the knower, I becomes the known. So at one point, I is the knower with reference to the thermos. At other point, the I is the known with reference to the mind. But the I cannot be the knower of its own self, meaning the I cannot know its own self as the object to be seen. When it is the seer, it is the seer. When it is the seen, it is the seen. One and the same thing will never become seer and seen at the same time. And here we are talking about consciousness which never becomes the seen. That's the law of Drigdrishya Vivek. The Drigeva Natu Drishyate. That ultimate consciousness is Drig Eva, is the seer alone. It will never become the seen. Because if that seer becomes the seen, then there is nothing called seer. Then it is everything is perishable. And then one will say, who knows that everything is perishable? So some other consciousness one has to bring into picture. Then is that perishable? Then if it is that perishable, then again it is useless. So ultimate consciousness has to be imperishable, which never becomes the seen. So that's why he says here that is already established, knower and known are separate. And so one analogy he gives now, that this fact have been proved, it cannot be revivified like a dead man. Somebody is dead, you bring him alive. Same way, some argument has already been done, the matter is settled. Why are you unnecessarily, raking up things where there's nothing? It's already settled. Nor can it be reversed by even 100 nihilist Buddhists. Even if so many Buddhists, they come and they say that this consciousness becomes object of knowledge of its consciousness itself becomes the seen, and consciousness itself is the seer. Even if they can do whatever they want to, even hundreds of them can come and do, the seer will always remain the seer. It will never become the seen. Because they also admit that the ultimate nothingness is experience. So who is the experiencer of that? Who is the knower of that? So they have to accept a consciousness which exists in the absence of everything also. Now, one point I want to mention here, that see, when they say Vainashika, and in this, not only in this commentary, but many other places, these Buddhist arguments have come. So there are people who say that Shankaracharyaji's time, the Buddhists were not there. So some people will say that Shankaracharya was before Buddha. And that he never had Vada at all. And he never drove Buddhism out of this country. All these arguments are very clear when the words which he has used, Vainashikena, all those are the Buddhist schools of thought. So that argument is not tenable. That Shankaracharya ji never had any arguments with the Buddhists, and he may have, revived Sanatana Dharma from the other sects. The supremacy of Advaita Vedanta was established by debate with other sects like Mimamsakas, Vaisheshikas, Nayayikas, all those. But Buddhists were not there. So he did not drive out the Buddhists. So many arguments are given. Everything becomes false or what? And look at the hair-splitting arguments that are there. After doing all this, if somebody just top of the head, they say Buddha, he never argued, against the Buddhists, and he was not responsible for reviving Sanatana Dharma from the decadence where the Hindus had converted into Buddhism, and so Hinduism was decadent and Buddhism was also decadent. At that time, Shankaracharya ji came up and revived. And single-handedly, by the time he finished his mission, established Advaita thoroughly, and people were inspired. So that has to become very clear to us. Anyway, that was a little sidetrack from the main discussion here, but this is one thing to know. Now, objection is again raised. Jnanasya jneyatvam eva iti tadapi anyena iti tvat pakshe ati prasanga iti chet. So the objection is, if you say that consciousness becomes the known, so if you say that to know the consciousness, another consciousness is required, insofar as knowledge is known by some other knowledge, there crops up an infinite regress from your point of view, since that knowledge must have another knowledge to know it, and that again another. This is objection raised here. The question here means what? Consciousness exists in deep sleep. The Purva Pakshi's objection is, until there is an object, consciousness cannot be known. That's his argument. Don't forget that main point there. So if no objects are possible, no objects are there in deep sleep, consciousness itself becomes the object, is the second argument. Shankaracharya says, no, consciousness doesn't become the object. So now he says that if consciousness does not become the object, it needs something else, some other consciousness to know itself, for it to be there. Because unless something is there, something else is there, it is not possible to know that consciousness exists. In absence of all objects, how consciousness is there? We don't know consciousness exists. And if consciousness cannot know itself, then there has to be some other consciousness which has to be there to be aware of this consciousness. Two consciousnesses have to be there. Then the question will be, what is that consciousness? What we just discussed some time back. So that is the objection here. That insofar as knowledge is known by some other knowledge, there crops up an infinite regress from your point of view, since that knowledge must have another knowledge to know it, and that again another. So it will go into infinite regress. The objection has been raised by this Siddhanti, Purva Pakshi. So Shankaracharya says, now tad vibhaga upapattehe sarvasya yada hi sarvam gneyam kasyachit tada tad vyatiriktam jnanam eva iti advitiyo vibhaga eva abhyupagamyate avainashikaihi na tritiyah tad vishaya iti anavastha anupapattihi. So he says it is not so. Why? Because the clear distinction between the knower and known we have established, and that everything is known to this consciousness, which is different from all the objects, is very, very clear. And that consciousness does not need anything else to know itself. It is Swayam Jyoti. If that Swayam Jyoti Swarup of consciousness is not understood, then we always want something else to prove existence of consciousness. It is like saying, if all the objects are removed, light will disappear. How will light disappear if objects are removed? It will not disappear. And if light is functioning, it is functioning only when the objects are there. In the absence of objects, we don't know existence of light. It is like, the argument is like that. So somebody says, no, light illumines its own self, like all the other objects. Shankaracharya says, no, it is not like that. Light is self-luminous. It will illumine absence of things. It will illumine presence of things. And this distinction between the light and what it illumines is very clear. So don't say that light illumines itself, so it has become the object of illumination. And that's why we know that there is light. So always an object is not necessary to know that which is self-existent. And so that everything is knowable to some knowledge, that knowledge which is different from its content remains what it is forever. Now this is a second category that is admitted by all who are nihilists. So even the Shunyavadi or the nihilist will say very clearly that yes, absence of everything exists, and there is no third categorization. All objects exist, or absence of all objects is there. In both states, it is awareness which is illumining. There is no third category, that there is some other consciousness which knows this consciousness which illumines the absence of all the objects or the presence of all objects. There is no third. Why are you bringing some other consciousness into picture? So even the Shunyavadi will not accept three, only two, seer and seen. There is no second seer who knows this first seer. It is not like that. So then again the objection is raised. Jnanasya svenaiva avigneyatve sarvajnatva hanihi iti chet. See, these arguments, they are subtle, but I really think that how people have put their mind to this topic and dealt with all kinds of permutations and combinations to really establish that consciousness alone is Swayam Jyoti, it is imperishable, it is a substratum. Firm conviction. After one studies and reflects on all these, there cannot be doubts, because this kind of doubts will not even come to our mind in our general reflection. Shankaracharya ji has put down so many subtle doubts and established very clearly. Now this person is asking, if you say consciousness does not know itself as an object, then the omniscient nature of consciousness gets destroyed. Because omniscience means you should know everything. Here you are saying consciousness does not become aware of itself. So then it is not omniscient. That's the objection raised. So here he says, Saha api doshaha tasya eva astu kim tan nibarhane na asmakam anavastha doshascha jnanasya gneyatva abhiupagamat avasyam cha vainashikanam jnanam gneyam swatmana cha avigneyatvena anavastha anivarya. So what does Shankaracharya ji reply here? He says that defect, if at all, also it should affect whom? That Buddhist only, the Buddhist alone it will affect. Why? There is the fault of infinite regress arising from the admission that knowledge is an object of knowledge. What we discussed earlier. If knowledge becomes the object of knowledge, then who is the knower? And if that is also an object of knowledge, who is the knower of that? So, knowledge is an object of knowledge, for knowledge is certainly knowable according to the Buddhist nihilist, because it is a Buddhist nihilist who will say this, that knowledge also becomes knowable, and so ultimately that will also become absent finally. So he has to answer that. We don't have a problem. We are to saying clearly consciousness is Swayam Jyoti, and as Swayam Jyoti it knows itself and it knows everything else, but it doesn't know itself as object. The problem is we try to objectify everything, where we create the distinction between knower and the known. So the knower can definitely know the known, but the knower does not become the known, because knower is sentient, it is conscious, the known is inert. And that which is conscious, the definition of consciousness itself is Swayam Bhati Anyan Bhasayati Sadhanam Vina, that which enlivens itself and others without any medium, that which is aware of itself and aware of others without any medium. Today, body, mind, intellect are the medium through which the awareness of the objects, emotions, and thoughts happens. Consciousness does not need any medium, and that's why consciousness is defined in the Vedas, indicated in the Vedas as the eye of the eye and the ear of the ear. Or in like Kaivalya Upanishad, it says that Achakshushhrotram tadapani padam. It does not have eyes, it does not have ears, it does not have hands, it does not have legs, yet it perceives everything. Without ears, it can hear. Without eyes, it can see. The mantras are there like that in the Upanishads. So consciousness is self-illumining, self-aware. It does not need anything. Now, those who are saying it needs something, they have to prove. It is their problem. In their understanding that if consciousness is not aware of itself, then the omniscience of consciousness is destroyed. That is their problem. That is not ours. They have to clearly clarify that. And because a particular knowledge cannot be known by itself and infinite regress is inevitable, then obviously the infinite regress will keep happening. So they have to solve that. Vedanta doesn't have to solve. The Purva Pakshi says, no, this objection, this problem is from your side also. Samana eva ayam dosha iti chet. So Shankaracharya says, na jnanasya ekatva upapattehe. It is not there from our side, because we have already established consciousness is one, and because of consciousness all the other things are known, and it never becomes the known. Sarva desha kala purushadi avastham ekameva jnanam nama rupadi aneka upadi bhedat savitradi jaladi pratibimbavat anekadha avabhasate iti na asau doshah tatha cha iha tatha chehedam uchyate. We have already established that all these names, forms, and these kalas, the 16 kalas of Purusha which will come now, all those kalas, he says that one consciousness exists in all places, times, persons that appear diversely because of differences in the limiting adjuncts. So one sun is reflecting in hundreds of pots. The difference is because of the pots. Sun has not become 100. And even when the pots are not there, sun is there by itself. It is the illumining factor. It does not require another sun. So that argument is not there on our side. So just like the reflection of the sun, etc. on water, therefore the objection has no force. And the statement that is under consideration here agrees with this. That consciousness as an eternal entity is the basis of all appearances. Statement here meaning this mantra, the second, this mantra, sixth chapter, second mantra, which the elaboration of which we are seeing. He says this statement is saying that only this one Purusha, from that all the kalas have appeared. We are not saying there are two and infinite regress and how many cons. So you cannot say that you also have infinite regress on your side. That objection is not correct, because we have said already, and that is what we all are discussing till now, that there is one consciousness alone from where all these are appearances, and they have not actually, consciousness has not modified to become these, not produced these. So these are not real. These are only appearances. Like the reflections are there. Sun has not become so many. If reflection, the medium is there, so reflection is there. Medium is not there, reflection disappears. Nothing happens to the sun. So that way, he says, this is clear that there is no such thing from our side. If you think that omniscience of consciousness is reduced because of it not knowing itself, then that is your problem and the Buddhist problem, who has to answer this. We are very clear. Now, having said that, nanu shruti hi shrutehe iha eva anta sharire parichinnaha kunda badaravat purusha iti. Now we again come back to the, see, we were already on the mantra only, but now we come into that portion which says iha eva anta sharire. Here itself in this body, that Purusha is known. So the objection is, if you say there is one Purusha from where this entire universe of 16 kalas comes up, how can that one Purusha, so the mantra says iha eva anta sharire. The Purusha becomes finite. You are saying consciousness is infinite and it is the enlivener of all the kalas of all different people and at all times, places, everything. But the mantra is saying iha eva anta sharire. So this sharira is perishable. And that consciousness is in that sharira. Then consciousness cannot be infinite. It is perishable. It is finite. So that's the objection. From this Upanishadic texts, here itself inside this body, it follows that Purusha is contained here inside the body like a jujube fruit in a vessel. That is Badari, Kunda Badaravat. Badara is at Badri Phalam. And in the vessel. So it is one small thing. Purusha is one small little thing inside. It is not infinite. So Shankaracharya says, na pranadi kala karanatvat nahi sharira matra parichinnasya prana shraddhadinam kalanam karanatvam pratipattum shaknuyat kala karyatvacha sharirasya nahi purusha karyanam kalanam karyam sat shariram karana karanam swasya purusham kunda badaram iva abhyantari kuryat. So he says here that the Purusha is the cause of prana, and because nobody will understand the Purusha as the source of such parts as prana, faith, etc., if he be delimited by a mere body. Prana itself functions because of Purusha, and prana here also is the total prana, not just the one prana here. And the 16 kalas will, in that prana will come, Shraddha will come, many things will come. That's what he indicates here, that prana, faith, etc. They all are originating from this Purusha. The body is only an effect. if you say that anta sharire here means this body, and inside that there is this purusha like the jujube fruit, badri fruit in that vessel, and then you say purusha has become limited, then your argument is flawed, because that which is a source of prana, total prana and faith and those 16 kalas, those 16 kalas only make up this body also. This body is an effect. And the cause of this body definitely is not a finite thing which is inside the body. The cause is infinite only. Then why it is adanta sharire, that we will see. So he says the effect, if you say that the effect is there, effect is finite. The cause is not cause is not finite here. Cause is infinite. It is the cause of all the bodies, of all the pranas. It is that infinite cause. So he says this body is an effect of those parts, because the body which is constituted by the parts, prana and the rest, which in their turn are products of the purusha, cannot contain within itself like a jujube in a vessel. So you cannot say purusha is one small little thing. Purusha is the karana, infinite. And don't misunderstand this as some purusha has got inside this body now. The purusha, who is the origin of its own source, is the absolute ultimate source. And there is nothing, no source of purusha. Purusha is self-existent, self-luminous. So don't think it is like a small object inside somewhere, because this is an effect, that is the cause. That the effect is pervaded by the cause does not make the effect, does not make the cause finite. Infinite cause is appearing as so many of these through 16 kalas, does not make that infinite cause finite. Mud can create, from the mud so many pots are created. Now the mud pervades that entire pot, but that does not make that mud as the cause limited by the size of the pot. Mud is still unlimited, so much mud is still there, and this also is existing in mud only, and when the form will go, it will again become mud only. So just because the effect is pervaded by the cause, it does not get completely limited. The infinite cause remains infinite only. So you cannot say that it is like a badri fruit inside a vessel. Now look at this objection that is raised. Very interesting objection this is. He says, Bija vrikshadi vat syad iti chet yatha bija karyam vrikshaha tat karyam cha phalam swakarana karanam bijam abhyantari karoti amradi tadvat purusham abhyantari kuryat shariram swakarana karanam api iti chet. See the argument, very interesting. This is possible on the analogy of the seed and the tree. So the tree is the effect of a seed, and the effect of that tree is a fruit, for example a mango, which holds in itself the cause of its cause, meaning which holds in itself the seed. The seed, which is the main seed, from that comes the tree. So main seed is, let us say, ultimate cause. From the ultimate cause comes the effect one, which is tree. The tree becomes the cause of the effect, which is mango. Now this mango has a seed. So he says that cause, which is the ultimate cause of the tree, is there in this mango. So that mango is holding the cause of the cause. So cause of the tree, and the tree's cause is the seed. So he says similarly, the body can contain within itself even Purusha, though he is the cause of its own cause. So he may be the cause of prana, total prana and everything, and the effect of that total prana is this one body, total prana, all the 5 elements, all that. Effect of that is one body. Ultimate Purusha is the seed. Prana and 5 elements and Shraddha and all this is the tree. And this body is the fruit. And just like that fruit has a seed inside, same way that Purusha is inside this small little thing. Look at this argument, what they all think and how all they all put this argument. Shankaracharya says, Arey Baba, that is not possible. Na. Anyatvat savayavatvacha. Drishtante karana bijat vrikshaphala samvritti vrikshaphala samvrittan yanyan yeva bijani दार्ष्टान्तिकेतु स्वकारण कारणभूत स एव पुरुषः शरीरे अभ्यन्तरीकृतः श्रूयते बीजवृक्षादीनां सावयत्वाच्च स्यात् आधार आधेयत्वं निरवयवश्च पुरुषः सावयवाश्च कलाः शरीरं च एतेन आकाशस्यापि शरीर आधारत्वं अनुपपन्नं किमुत आकाश कारणस्य पुरुषस्य तस्माद् असमानो दृष्टान्तः. Very clear. He says, because of 2 reasons, this argument is not acceptable. The reasons are the difference and divisibility. Divisibility means it has parts. So we will come to that. Difference and divisibility. So he says, first is, what is the difference? The analogy, in that analogy itself there is a flaw. Why? Because the seed which is there in that mango and the seed which is there as the root cause of the tree, they are different, because this seed has perished. See, that's what he says. In the analogy, the seed contained in the fruits of the tree are different from the seed that produced the tree. Whereas in the case to which the analogy applies, the same Purusha who is the cause of the body is heard in the Upanishad to be confirmed within the body. It is not perishable. It is imperishable. Bodies come and go. It remains as it is. And it enlivens the body. So with reference to the body and what we know, from there, with which we are identified, it is said that Purusha is the enlivener. So turn within and realize what is that which enlivens this body. That you are not this body. And it is in a context the Upanishad says that. It does not mean that it makes the Purusha into finite. That Purusha is inside this body, so when body perishes, Purusha perishes. No. In the case of that seed, that is what happens. That ultimate seed is gone. Then the tree has come, and then that tree gives rise to the fruit which has another seed inside. This main seed modified to become the tree and by itself perished also. But that is not the situation here. That is one point he says. Then he says, moreover, things like tree and seed can be related by way of the container and the thing contained. So this mango contains the seed inside it. Because they both are finite, they have parts. So he says that container and the thing contained, because they are composite by nature, meaning they have parts and they are finite, and one can be put into the other can be taken out, one can be taken out from the other, it can be put into the other. Those things can happen. But Purusha is not divisible like that. It does not have any parts. And though the parts, etc., the prana, etc., and the body are. So the appearances, the 16 kalas, they are finite, they have parts. The Purusha does not have any parts, it is infinite. So again, that is the divisibility part. So the difference part is in the analogy there is a difference, because in that the ultimate seed perishes, here it will not, and it is infinite, imperishable. And divisibility is there, those are parts, and then you can remove, you can add, you can do many things. But here Purusha doesn't have any parts. Body has parts, and that is what the body is enlivened by that Purusha. But Purusha by itself does not have any parts. So he says, hereby it is shown that in as much as even space, now the third logic he gives, that even as much as space itself, which is infinite, cannot be contained in this body. This body is inside space, but that infinite space cannot be contained inside this body. Then Purusha is the cause of that space. How can you say that that Purusha, which is the cause of this entire space, is like a small jujube fruit in a vessel? Like that, it is one small entity in this body. So he says that here it is shown that in as much as even space cannot be contained within the body, much less can Purusha, who is the cause of space, be confined within it. There may be space, some parts in the body which have space, like the pores will have space, these ears will have space, like that. Space is there in the body, but not total space. The total space can never be contained in this one body. It's impossible. And then what to talk of Purusha, who is the cause of that total space? So it's impossible. Don't reduce the Purusha to finitude. The Siddhanti, the Purva Pakshi has been trying that. Try to remove the existence of consciousness. Try to say consciousness is not omniscient. Try to say that consciousness is perishable. It is like a small little thing inside. He says, no, none of that will apply. So he says, much less the Purusha, who is the cause of the space, be confined within it. Therefore, the illustration is inapt. So what does this Siddhanta Purva Pakshi do now? So he says, Kim drishtantena vachanasyaditi chet. He says, what? This analogy is just an analogy. You leave that analogy. The point is that the mantra itself is saying that iha eva anta sharire. So what do you have to talk about that? Okay, my analogy is not right. Accepted, fine. You leave the analogy. Is the mantra not saying iha eva anta sharire? So Purusha is in the sharira only. Now how can you refute that? Now tell the refutation of that. So Shankaracharya says, na vachanasya akarakatvat nahi vachanam vastuno anyatha karane vyapyate kim tarhi yatha bhutarthau द्योतनेन भूतार्थावद् द्योतनेन तस्माद् अंतः शरीर इत्येतद् वचनमण्डस्य अंतर व्योमेति वच्च द्रष्टव्यम. So he says this is not, your argument does not hold water. Why? Because these texts are not creating something new. The text is not meant to reverse anything. The Shastra is not, this mantra is not trying to create something new by saying Anta Sharire. It is not trying to say that Purusha is residing inside here as one small finite entity. Or then what is the purpose of the text? It is concerned with expressing things as they are. It will only tell the truth as it is. Therefore, the text inside the body is to be understood in the same sense as the statement that space exists within the cosmic egg. What does that mean? Space is the cause of the universe, but since space pervades everything, it is perceived as confined within the universe. So, it is a figurative expression. It is not a literal expression. And it has a context. Anta Sharire means here and now I can realize this by turning my attention within. It is not to make the Purusha finite, it is to turn the direction of the seeker. That don't search Purusha somewhere out there. That Shodashakala Purusha, which is the cause of this entire universe, is experienced here and now as your own true self, not as something outside. It is for that the scripture says Anta Sharire. So it is a figurative expression. So he says here, therefore the text inside the body is to be understood. Besides, that text conforms only to empirical experience insofar as from logical grounds as seeing, hearing, thinking, knowing, etc. The Purusha is experienced within the body as though he is a limited being. So seeing, hearing, all these things which are happening, they are happening because of the enlivening presence of this Purusha. And this logic that Purusha is in the body is only from the empirical standpoint. Because we are seeing the body, then we say Purusha is the enlivener. By itself, Purusha has no body. It is infinite. No body, no change, nothing happens in that Purusha. But we are seeing, and the question is, from where did all this come? Who is that Shodashakala Purusha? So we have associated. And so if we see the kalas functioning, then whose kala they are? They are Purusha's kala. And then same Purusha is here also. This is also a part of the kala, and this is being enlivened by that same Purusha only. So it is to explain that it is said, that is here. Experience within the body as though he is limited being. He is not limited, he is unlimited only. And since he is realized, therefore it is said, O amiable one, that Purusha is inside the body. We read up to Drashtavyam, Vyomavaccha Drashtavyam. Upalabdhi Nimittatvacha Darshana Shravana Manana Vijnanadi Lingaihi Anta Sharire Parichinna Ivahi Upalabhyate Purusha Upalabhyate Chata Uchate Anta Sharire Somya Sapurusha Iti Na Punarakasha Karanaha San Kunda Badarivat Sharira Parichinna Iti Manasa Api Ichchati Vaktum Mudho Api Kimuta Pramana Bhuta Shrutihi. One tight slap. He says that even a fool wishes to conceive mentally, when not even a fool wishes to conceive mentally that Purusha, who is the cause of the space, can be encompassed within the body, encompassed by the body like a jujube in a vessel, much less a Vedic text which is valid means of knowledge to do so. Even a fool will not think like this. That the Purusha, which is the cause of this entire space and the whole universe, is in this body like one finite perishable entity, then what to talk about Vedic texts? If Vedic texts are saying that Purusha is inside, it is in the context to turn our attention within, to make us realize that the ego which we think is running this body is a myth. It is actually consciousness alone which is enlivening this. So the purpose of the Shastra is to turn the direction to make us realize the true nature of our self. It is not to reduce Purusha into finite nature. Now, this commentary of this second mantra will end here. Now, going ahead, the connection between the second and the third mantra is now established here. Yasmin etaha shodasha kalaha prabhavanti iti uktam purusha visheshenartham kalanam prabhavaha sacha anyarthopi shrutaha kena kramena syad iti atah idam uchyate chetana purvika cha srishtihi iti evam artham cha. So he says here that as a description of the Purusha, it has been said that Purusha in whom originate those 16 parts. The mantra itself said that. This second mantra itself explained about that. Yasmin etaha shodasha kalaha. prabhavanti iti. So he says, that mantra says that though that origination of parts was stated there in the Upanishad in another connection, it is to establish the infinite nature of Purusha. It is said that from that comes all the entire creation. It is meant for that, to establish infinite nature of creation, and that's why the argument also that we saw is very clearly refuting that iha eva anta sharire does not mean that Purusha has become finite. Now that was the purpose of that Upanishad. Still, the present text is meant to recount the order in which the origination occurred, as also to show that creation is preceded by intelligence. Now the further mantras which will come, they will explain in what order the appearances have happened, and also to establish the consciousness that pervades the whole universe, and there is an intelligent cause which is that consciousness. So it is not that these 16 kalas, they are there and themselves they have made the creation happen. The 16 kalas enlivened by the Purusha, then only creation will happen. So the intelligent cause of the creation is inherent in the creation. So now the origin of this and the way by which what comes first, what comes next, the sequence, etc. will come. But please remember, don't forget, this entire argument was not just for technicality. Don't forget the first point in the entire discussion of the second mantra. The first point was that all these kalas are only superimpositions. They are not really there in the Purusha. A Purusha is absolute by itself. There is no division in the Purusha. And from that Purusha, nothing comes out. Whatever is there also is just a delusory appearance. Then why sequence, etc. is being explained now? That was what the connection was. It is just to explain to us that Purusha pervades this entire creation, and that same Purusha is in your heart. Know that Purusha, detached from the kalas, is meant for that. So that we will take up after 2 weeks. Any questions for today?
Hariam Swamiji. So now this entire thing, as Shankaracharya already has said, that this is merely the play of different appearances. So I want to know that from the Buddhist standpoint, is the theory of appearance in any way, do they also consider any kind of unreality to this world, or do they feel that this world has any reality to it? Or what I'm asking is whether the appearance theory is unique to only Advaita Vedanta, or are they also saying it's an appearance, but they're saying that everything goes away at the end of it, including the consciousness?
Now, appearance theory as it comes in Vedanta is unique to Vedanta.
Okay.
Give me 1 minute. What is appearance theory of Vedanta? Infinite consciousness remaining as it is, swaswarupa aparityagena rupantara apattihi. That is what appearance theory of Vedanta is. Vivartavada means that without undergoing any change, the substratum appears as the superimposition. It has not gone through any change. Without undergoing any change, rope appears as the snake. That's the appearance theory. So the snake is an illusion, and illusion from the standpoint of when we see and we want to understand, then we say snake is an illusion. Otherwise, for the person who is in delusion, that person thinks snake is real. But when we want to see clearly what it is, then we say no, snake is an illusion. Then we come to the third level where we say no, snake did not ever get created nor ever existed, only rope is. So the appearance being real is level 1, which is where we are in delusion. Appearance being illusory is level 2, which is the sadhana to be done. so that we detach from the appearances and try to know what is the substratum. When we do that inquiry, we come to the substratum, we realize appearances don't exist at all. This is appearance theory in Vedanta. In short, Buddhist appearance theory is not anywhere close to this. Buddhist appearance theory means what we saw earlier. In this context, we are talking about the Kshanika Vijnanavad. So, with every thought, so when we experience the world is finite. Buddhist philosophy is based on the four truths.
Yeah.
There is the sorrow in the world. There is a cause for sorrow in the world. There is freedom from sorrow, and there's a method for that freedom from sorrow. That is a Buddhist main base. If you go by the core teaching of Buddhist, what we understand, the real Buddhism is just like Vedanta only, where they don't speak about appearance, but they will say avidya is there, then that is what is causing desire, then thoughts, actions, and this is a cycle of karma and janma and marana. We are stuck in this, and this samsara is there. The ultimate cause of samsara is avidya. Literally the same words are used. And the removal of avidya is the solution. Then how to remove that avidya? Then eightfold noble path, etc. you follow, purify the mind, you meditate, and you will remove the avidya. So in that sense, Buddhism and Vedanta are same from the standpoint of knowledge. That knowledge alone removes the ignorance, and it is the knowledge of consciousness. This school of thought, which is the either the Shunyavadi, nihilist, or the Kshanika Vijnanavadi, the momentary consciousness. So the momentary consciousness ones, they will say that when we perceive the world, we perceive through the thought. So with every thought, consciousness is created and it gets destroyed. So the thought is also an appearance, consciousness also is an appearance with that, and that's why this whole argument that they bring about, that if objects are not there, consciousness does not exist. And so they need objects to be there, then only consciousness can be established. And then, of course, the Shunyavadi says, no, there is absolute truth is finally zero, there is nothing. It is a blank, it is a Shunya. But we should remember those are not actually core teachings of Buddhism. Buddhism believes in consciousness. So the appearance theory, as in Vedanta, is not there in Buddhism. They have a different appearance theory for themselves, where the Kshanika Vijnanavad will say it will keep appearing, disappearing, appearing, disappearing. So the example they give for it is the flame of the candle. Now, when we look at the flame of the candle, that flame of the candle to us looks one flame only. So you light the candle, there is one flame, and then after some 5 minutes, you blow off the candle, that flame is gone. Buddhists say, no, it is not like that. Every second, there is a flame that is appearing and disappearing. So that flame is continuously renewing itself, because that example is meant for the samsara. The samsara is continuously changing. So everything here is appearing, disappearing, appearing, disappearing. And so consciousness also is a part of that. So it appears and disappears. That's all is their theory, not like in Vedanta.
Great, Swamiji. Thank you.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.